Do you sometimes feel like people on the opposite end of the political spectrum from you are just awful? If you're on the left, you probably think the right's crazy. If you're on the right, you probably think the left's a bunch of idiots. And yet, if you're like me, you probably have friends and family and coworkers who are on the opposite end of the political spectrum from you. So that's a little confusing, possibly, because they seem like they're good people. How could they possibly be so stupid or crazy? And if you talk about politics, if you don't just completely avoid the topic altogether, it probably gets pretty heated. So let's talk about how you can maybe reduce your emotion about the situation, about what the other person is saying, so that you can not avoid the topic altogether. You can actually talk about it, and so that you can stay calm in the moment, hear what they have to say what you want to say, without getting loud or mean. Hi, Jen the therapist. Okay, today we're going to talk about judgments, how they affect our emotions, how we can recognize them, and how we can change them so that they don't affect us so much. Today we're really going to be talking about what happens in your head, not so much judgments out loud that you're saying, but more about the judgments we say in our head that then lead to these big emotions. Step one is understanding how our judgments affect our emotions. So this axis just is our emotion. So this would be like low intensity emotion, and this would be like high intensity emotion. This is just time that goes off into infinity. So here's you or me or anyone on an average day. Our emotion, we're always feeling a little something, but it's pretty low. And then someone says something. And you know what kind of something I mean. Something that just, it wasn't even necessarily a political conversation yet. But it's one of those things that just kind of makes you hold your breath, and you're like, this person said that. This person believes that. That's so wrong, right? So on the inhale, you're just shocked, right? So this is what they said, right? And your emotions are going up, right? And then you have a judgment, right? So on the inhale, you're kind of thinking, oh my gosh, I can't believe they said that. And then the second part of that sentence is, what an idiot. They're crazy. I can't believe how immoral they are. Right? So that's the judgment part. Okay? So when we make a judgment like that in our head, it tends to, at a bare minimum, keep us on that same trajectory. Whereas if you hadn't made the judgment, you kind of have this upwards motion, and then you kind of start to level off and return back to baseline. But since you had a judgment, that keeps you on that upward trajectory, right? And then, of course, eventually you'll trail off and you'll get back down to baseline. We always do. And so if we want to change that, what we do is we frame it non-judgmentally. So instead of saying that they're crazy, we might say, okay, what do I mean when I say crazy? I think what I actually mean is they're misinformed. Or what do I mean when I say they're stupid? They may not have all the facts, right? or I don't agree with their logic. That's a different way of phrasing it that might bring your intensity of emotion down. Another thing is to just repeat in your head what they said, what their body language was like when they said it, what their facial expression was all about. Just focusing on the facts that are observable. We call those non-judgmental facts, right? And so if you've learned this, then your goal is to rephrase it. Think about facts. So you notice your judgment, right? Because you've learned this, and you want to think about it differently. So at this point, you're like, oh, okay, that was a judgment, and I can feel my heart rate, and I can feel the tension in my body. And so I want that intensity to go down because I don't want to yell. And I also don't want, this has happened to me before, where I just freeze and I don't say anything, and then I kick myself later, and I'm like, oh, why didn't I say anything? I don't agree with that, but I just stood there because I didn't want to be ugly. And so you don't want to scream, and you don't want to just stand there. You want to state your own opinion, but probably not while you're up here, right? So if you can think about just the facts, if you can rephrase your judgments and focus on what you actually know, what you can see, what you can hear, what you can smell, what you can taste, what you can touch, those are facts, right? What the person said is a fact. And then you start to say, okay, you know what? I don't have enough information. So the next thing that tends to come out of your mouth after you've thought about the facts and your emotion starts to go down is you want clarification. You start to realize, okay, I don't have enough of the facts. So you start to ask them questions, and this turns into a conversation instead of freezing and saying nothing, or staying in that tense state and saying something that you really regret. So the goal when you practice this is not to not have the judgments. The goal is to just get better at noticing your judgments, notice them sooner, and then start thinking about the facts sooner. So if I were to notice it here, then I'd catch myself sooner. If I notice it here, ooh, that's pretty cool. I'm right back to baseline pretty quick, or maybe not baseline because this is going to be a tense conversation, but I'm back down, which is pretty cool because it's likely that they're going to say something else at some point in the conversation that is going to be upsetting to you. And if they say it right here, if you're already here, this is going to turn into a screaming match, or here or here. But what if you're all the way back down here, right? Then, things are going to start going up again, but you can catch yourself again. And then the conversation has these little bumps in it where your emotion goes up, but you're able to bring it back down, stay in the conversation, not get foggy, think straight, and be able to convey your opinion and have a level-headed conversation with this person rather than a screaming match. Or just saying nothing. That tends to be my go-to. I'm not a screamer. I'll just clam up, and yeah, that's when inside I'm not breathing, I'm tense. I don't agree with you, but for some reason I'm kind of nodding. And I hate that. I look back at it later and I say, why? Why didn't I speak up? Why didn't I say something? I don't agree with that. And I have the facts and the knowledge to prove my point, but my intensity of emotion just really, really got in my way. Okay, well, this one turned out to be really long, so it's going to be a two-parter. So look for part 2. This part 1 was all about noticing how your judgments affect your emotions, get you a little bit of motivation for catching those judgments when they're happening, and then about how to rephrase those judgments in a way to help you bring down your emotions. The second part is going to be all about how to recognize when you're making judgments. There's so many different kinds of judgments. So just going to educate you on what all falls in the category of a judgment so that you can catch them and rephrase them and bring down your emotions. Okay, I hope this was another helpful video. Number 3 in the bank, ready to go. Again, I'm planning to put one up every Tuesday because that's what they say to do. So I'm supposed to at this point tell you like, share, subscribe, turn on your alerts. I think that's all of them. But my favorite one and most important one is please share this. I really want people to learn about how their emotions are affected by politics and start to learn to feel more in control so that they feel like they can, talk with their own friends and family. This political divide is so close to home. I mean, if you can't even talk to your own close friends and family about politics, then how are we ever going to fix this chasm, this divide in this country? So maybe this is a conversation starter. Maybe you want to send this to a friend or family member that you've gotten in some heated discussions with, or that want someone that says something from time to time that you don't agree with, but you just freeze because you don't know what to say. Maybe this is where to start. Thanks for watching, and thanks for sharing.